Thank you so much, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for coming to the event today on the future of content moderation. We are hosting this event due to the announcement of Mark Zuckerberg shortly after New Year that Meta would change its policy on content moderation. In particular, Meta is moving away from the third-party fact-checking program to community nodes that X or formerly Twitter is currently using. The content moderations overall will be less inclusive as well, targeting issues related to religious affiliation, gender identity, for example. I know that the policy hasn't applied to Southeast Asia yet, but it will eventually. That's why we invite experts to talk about the situation today. I'm Ploy Chanprasert, Executive Director of DigitalReach, and I'll be moderating for the event today. Our speakers today are Tordesillas, President and co-founder of VERA, a fact-checking organization in the Philippines; Septiaji Nugroho, Chairperson of MAFINDO, a fact-checking organization in Indonesia; and Associate Professor Dr. M. Sinpeng from the Faculty of Arts and Social Science at the University of Sydney. We are going to have a discussion for about 45 minutes, followed by the 10 minutes Q&A. So let's start with the discussion now. I'll start with Ellen and Zach. The first question is, how has it been within the fact-checking community following the announcement? Has there been any notification directly from Meta to you following the announcement?
This is a period of great uncertainty for us, and it's not good. The Asia Pacific coordinator of Facebook got in touch with us because January 8th, because it was January 7 when Mark Zuckerberg announced the end of the fact-checking program, starting with the United States. We were told that our contract, which is good for 1 year, and December 31, 2025, remains unchanged. So that's good news for us. That's what they told us the day Zuckerberg announced the end of the fact-checking program, starting with the United States. In the United States, it ends in March next month. That's still good news for us, but it means that we cannot expect much after 2026. The problem is between January and now, so many things have happened. Under the Trump administration, President Trump announced the end of foreign aid, and Elon Musk saying that USAID is a criminal organization. So we are a non-profit media organization. We survive on grants. And we have a substantial grant coming from United States NGOs, which are also dependent on government funding. So we are affected. Even they themselves don't know what's happening. They cannot be certain. So yeah, it's a period of uncertainty.
What about you, Zach? How
Well, after the announcement from the Meta CEO, we haven't been in contact with the Meta representations, but as long as we have the collaboration with party fact checker still continues, we are very surprised about the announcement by the Meta CEO at the time, because it is not about the ending of the partnership, but the reason why they end the partnership in the US, for example, saying the fact checkers are biased and doing censorship, which is, of course, we do not, as far as we know. We had quite intense communications between us. We have a mailing list. We have also monthly meeting, and we know that the content produced by the fact checkers are quite similar to what we done in every other country. So I think it's very surprising, because in Indonesia, we are not working alone. We also work with other fact checkers in checkfacta.com coalitions. Now we have 100 online medias working with us. We published the response of the Meta CEO as a solidarity for US fact checkers, even though in Indonesia, the collaboration still continue. Of course, we need to be prepared, just like Ellen says, a lot of uncertainty that we have to face in the future.
Thank you so much. I wonder, how has Meta been supporting fact-checking community, and how useful it's been based on your experience? How do you think that following the announcement, these are going to change?
In our talk with Meta Asia Pacific coordinators, they themselves are in limbo. They do not know. Beyond what Zuckerberg said, they cannot elaborate. As far as Meta is concerned, we have to learn. VERA Files was founded in 2008. Our fact-checking program started in 2016. VERA Files has been there before Meta. We will continue the job of informing the public, empowering the public with correct information, because we are journalists. Meta financial support helped a lot in our sustainability, but I'm very sure we'll find other means. The fact-checking community in the Philippines is very small. There are only 2 of us that are Meta third-party fact-checkers in the Philippines, although there are other IFC and signatories, and there are more fact-checkers that are not IFC and signatories, but it's a lively, small community, and we will continue. We have an elections this coming May, and we will continue the work. We are journalists, so.
Did they support you with some kind of training as well? Other supporting initiative?
Yes, Facebook has a lot of programs. That's what one good thing about Peb. We really availed of all the opportunities to improve ourselves. We started with Facebook in 2018. During the 6 years or 7 years as third-party fact-checker of Facebook, it has been a very good relationship as far as trainings and other opportunities are concerned. It has been good.
Do you think that's going to change?
It depends, like you said, 1 year. So we do not know what happens in 2016. Who knows? You just have to keep a positive attitude towards this.
We have been very good collaborations with the Meta teams since 2018. They are very helpful for creating good line of communications during the pandemic. It was very intense for us because a lot of misinformation that spread in the Facebook at that time. So there are a lot of initiatives that helps us to tackle the misinformation in the recent years. From the beginning of our collaborations with Meta until last year, Facebook is the #1 platform that spread misinformation in Indonesia. So I think these collaborations help us a lot to tackle those misinformations in Facebook. And there are also channels created by Facebook, not only for fact checkers like us, but also with for credible CSOs to provide reports, trusted partner channels. I think this is also quite helpful, especially during the elections in 2024. So it's not only fact checkers that can provide feedback. We have several coalitions or collaborations on tackling misinformation and hate speech. So compared to some other platforms, actually Meta is providing quite comprehensive way channels and also technologies like dashboard that can be used to accelerate with tackle misinformation and hate speech. But yeah, of course, if there is a step back, it's going very big challenge because nowadays actually what we face is going to be much difficult compared to like 2-3 years ago, because now we face a lot of deep fakes, not only for political issues, but also in scams and phishing, and it's going to threaten internet users, especially with a quite low digital safety level like Indonesian people.
Looking forward, the policy is moving to Southeast Asia. Have you prepared for the change?
As a non-profit media organization, for anything to our up to work with, it's not the same for us. We hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Our attitude always looking for alternatives, diversify. Since we are in the business of fighting disinformation, the basics remain the same. That's why when Seth said what we don't like about Zuckerberg's decision is the reason he gave, we cannot accept that. I had the feeling that Zuckerberg does not know what he was talking about, because the report that we were getting from Facebook is different. Like during the COVID-19, Facebook came out with a survey that 90% of those who saw our fact checks did not click on the post that we labeled as false. That's a very high percentage. The latest report was that 84% of those who read our post did not bother to click, we labeled as false. Imagine the service we give to Facebook visitors, to Facebook followers. And that's a survey coming from their own people. So apparently, non-partisanship, before you are accepted as a Facebook third-party fact-checker, you have to be an IFCN, International Fact-Checking Network, signatory. And it's very rigid, the standards that IFCN set as to non-partisanship and transparency of sources, transparency of methodology, and all that. That's why it's not acceptable. He was just pressured by Trump, and for business reasons, he caved in. That's it.
Maybe for me, because MAFINDO is community-based fact checker, so we are always training our volunteers. We have 1,044 cities. So anything happens to Meta and fact checkers partnership, we will stay there as fact checkers. It's about the scale. The MAFINDO work is not only about fact checking, but also we invest on pre-banking. We do a lot of collaborations on educations. Nowadays, we are also working with many counterparts on doing AI educations. So I think we will try to make sure that this important line of fact checking will stay, although the scale is going to be smaller. We are still learning how to create much more impact using less resources. This challenge is going to push us to create more initiatives or maybe some innovations that maybe can help us to make sure that maintaining the fact checking, we need to also to be creative on how to get ahead of the next features.
Thank you so much. I think we still have a little bit time left in this session. I just wanted to ask you something. Meta is supposed to be helping the fact-checking organization to disseminate the pre-bunk information throughout that platform. Do you think it has been effective in the past? Has it been really helpful in that situation?
The style of fact-checking?
After you fact-check the informations, right? And then when you are their partner, they're supposed to help you disseminate it. That like fact-check information that you already work on throughout that platform. Yeah. Has it been effective?
Yeah, I think all the support that Meta has given us worked. But we are not dependent on Meta as far as disseminating our work is concerned. We utilize other platforms like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all that. The content that we create through Meta, as far as dissemination is concerned, it's not just Meta that can be credited. Meta reaches out to others.
For me, I think we try to work on pre-banking as early as 2022 during the pandemic and mostly since 2023 ahead of elections. But we feel that we haven't met the best way to deliver pre-banking. I mean, like Google, they had a research with Jigsaw on pre-banking, but we feel that other platforms, including Meta, TikTok, we haven't quite find like the best way actually how to convey the pre-banking, which is actually going to be very important, especially when we are going to be flooded with video-based misinformation and also AI-based misinformation. Even though the partnership still continues, there are still gaps that we need to fill, including and how to make sure that fact-checking is going to really effective, fact-checking is going to have a good impact. I think this is still the challenge. If there is a kind of step back, like what happens in US to our counterparts, I think it's going to put more pressure for us. The answer that we are going to have at the moment in Indonesia, we are fortunate enough that there are quite strong partnerships with civil society organizations that back up each other. So it means that fact checkers should not be facing this challenge alone. We have to make sure that we communicate better with our partners, including civil society organizations, and also to advocate good regulations. This is something that's still ongoing, but we feel that we have to wake up together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll move to Dr. Aim. So this is going to be the question that is about the policy itself. Zuckerberg change in policy seems to be a dangerous move. Do you think that the community nodes will be better than the third-party fact-checking program like what he claimed?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, especially being among Southeast Asia's models of fact-checking MAFINDO. And I'm Just an academic, so my experience is largely indirect. Having said that, when you think about a question about why you might phrase the issue of moving towards community nodes as something dangerous, we need to examine our assumption about why we think that might be dangerous. So looking at the issue of crowdsource content moderation as a model in theory, and why this might be a good idea for Meta to pursue, I think it's a good starting point, because kind of taking us out of that assumption that what we're seeing is a bad thing, and then we can explore whether or not it is a bad thing, right? In theory, from a business perspective, why is crowdsourced content moderation a good model? One, it's cheaper. It's cost effective. Two, it reduces reputational damage and risk because you're outsourcing it to the crowd. So less liability, less exposure to reputational damage. That's good for business. And third, it's supposed to be more scalable, because as you open it up to everyone, you could start slowly open up first to US users and then the rest of the world. You can kind of see the expansion of the engagement of the community. From the business perspective, I get why they're doing that. In fact, Meta is quite late in the game. Reddit's been doing it forever. Twitch. I mean, there's so many other platforms before Twitter, before X, that's adopted this model. Up until X, I think there wasn't much of broad discussion about the ethics and morality, whether it's a right or wrong thing to do, when it was just other type of commodities. So when it's X and then it's Meta, the question almost becomes more political about why they're outsourcing something this important. They've outsourced it before to reputable, well-trained NGOs like MAFINDO and VERA files, but they're sort of walking away from it altogether. I think to see it from the business perspective underscores where Meta is pivoting itself compared to previously. I mentioned this previously because I remember having this similar conversation with MAFINDO before COVID about the direction to which Meta was taking itself in terms of content moderation. I remember vividly the conversations at the Singapore office with the policy people about how they're really trying to expand regional-based teams and empower more local regional teams to deal with more sensitive issues, such as Myanmar. They started to hire more staff locally, and then COVID hit and they went the AI way. I remember these conversations that at the time the leadership realized that they want to have more regional local solutions to global problems of disinformation, misinformation, and therefore they're trying to chip away at it by increasing the human supervision over content versus AI. And that ratio completely flipped after COVID on it, this decline of the use of humans altogether, whether or not they outsource. I think it's not a surprise to see Meta making this decision. It had been going that way since COVID. And it is just sort of their big announcement that we're broken off with our commitment to really overseeing the content moderation. Now, what has existing research said about this whole model of crowd-based content moderation, and whether or not there's kind of two things we really care about? Well, there's more things, but two key things we care about. Does it increase engagement, like user engagement, community engagement? And secondly, does it help to correct human behavior? Because if we're anticipating seeing a lot of misinformation or AI-created content on these platforms, we want crowdsourced content moderation to flag it and potentially change behavior of users, right? And so far, the research on Reddit, Twitch, and more recent research on X platforms that I have seen have really shown mixed results. There is one, though, common findings that seem to be happening across all platforms is that it seems to increase engagement of the community. So more people are kind of engaging with the content moderation. It has mixed messages in terms of its quality of that engagement, whether or not it decreases or increases polarization. So we're seeing echo chamber effects versus more of engagement across political divides or different groups of different views. There's more positive research on Reddit that it has led to greater identification of misleading information, but that could be down to factors of types of topics, level of engagement, and the extent to which there's broader engagement outside the community. There's less evidence of that across X, but it's quite recent. There has been very little findings that confirm that using the crowdsourced content moderation model has led to behavioral change of user. So I think that's a harder question anyway, even with the fact-checking communities, and MAFINDO mentioned that with MAFINDO. I think examining the question whether or not this is a dangerous move for Meta, we need to ask ourselves, who is it? What's the danger, and danger to whom? I think from Meta's perspective, it's probably a relief for a lot of them. Maybe not the policy people, but they were never a majority anyway. It's a company run by engineers. They're walking away from this huge responsibility that put them under a lot of political pressure in the past. And it's probably going to save them money for them to be divesting in other ventures that they're trying to pursue. What does it mean for content moderation across social media platform in general? I think it just means that one of the biggest companies in social media is following along with the model that most other platforms have now adopted. So in some way, we're kind of going to the world in which most social media platform now doesn't have very robust, systematic company platform directed content moderation. It's all of the crowd now. What can we anticipate in terms of potential impacts on various dimensions of human rights and democracy? I think we may see increased engagement on the platform by the users themselves, which may be good or bad. We shall see. There might be lots of people feeling motivated or mobilized to participate in this more crowdsourced model. But it could create bias. We do know that across different types of crowdsourced platforms, including non-social media like Wikipedia and other kind of crowdsource-based content moderation or editing, we do see bias in terms of gender. We see bias in terms of language, country of origin, and cultural bias. We tend to see, for example, more male viewpoints because men are far more likely to be able to devote time to do any kind of volunteer like this. We should anticipate these biases being manifested in the new model for Meta. Political divisions may not go away, as they may either stay entrenched or expand, depending on the topic. And marginalized groups could be more likely to be exposed to misinformation that's not corrected or potential attacks against them, either by AI or other opposing groups. There might be more research that look across different platforms in the future to see whether there are differences within the algorithms that lead to different behaviors of content moderators across the nature of the crowd. But I think that's interesting to see. In short, I think this is not a bad move from Meta from the business perspective. This is a model that is largely adopted by most major social media platforms. It's not new. Given the size of Meta and its importance in a number of countries where the issues of democracy and human rights are at risk, this is not good news on that front, because it means that we are now leaving these very important issues to the crowd.
Thank you so much. Alan and Zach, do you want to add something regarding this question?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting one. How can we see about the community nodes? From our perspective, I think community nodes and third-party fact checkers should coexist. I mean, from the beginning, MAFINDO is actually doing community nodes because we have concern about a lot of misinformation on the platforms, and we do fact check and we publish on our personal accounts, and then we create Facebook groups starting like a few hundred people. Now we have 100,000 people there. It's basically a crowdsourcing way to do the fact checking. So it means that we know it has a lot of benefits, but because the challenge is increasing, not everything can be solved using this kind of community nodes, because the range issues in the platforms is not only about political issues, it is also about health issues that need expertise, it is also about disaster issues, it has also need expertise to answer. And now we are entering the new era that it is going to be much harder to fact check special contents like deepfakes, because sometimes using even several tools, sometimes we cannot really sure whether this is AI generated or this is actually real content. So it means that the professional fact checkers, well-trained fact checkers, still very important to overcome the misinformations, while the engagement for the users through community nodes, if there is a way to make them coexist, it will be the best way to have the initiative on countering misinformations. So I think that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have to go back to the reason why Meta, Facebook, set up the third-party fact-checking program. It was in the wake of all the complaints about how unsafe Facebook has become way back in 2015, especially the situation in Myanmar. So it was to make Facebook a safe place to go to. That was the underlying reason why they have to come up with this third-party fact-checking program. So now they are removing that, and then you go back to community engagement. Sep is correct. No, it's not a case of the community engagement replacing a fact-checking. They can coexist. The problem with community engagement is that it might be a battle of who speaks the loudest. And it could be a very stressful venue. That defeats the reason for the program, which is to reduce the harm of the platform and to make it safe to visit.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And you raise your hand.
I thought Seth had a great idea about coexisting, and my thought initially was, why wouldn't you be able to coexist? I mean, like, exactly as you said, MAFINDO had started this way. There are a whole range of crowdsourced initiatives across Southeast Asia that started like this, and then it's expand. So are you thinking that by coexisting, do you mean that your community wouldn't necessarily join up with Meta, or would not do content moderation on Meta, would just do it on your own, or you're hoping that both will happen?
To us and verify, as long as Meta is there and they want to continue the relationship, then we'll go on with the relationship. We'll really explore ways not so dependent on fighting disinformation solely through Meta. We will find other ways of fighting this. As journalists, we feel it is our duty to empower the public with the correct information, fight disinformation. We will explore ways of doing it, not only with Meta. Meta's support financially is a big thing to sustain us, to be able to do other things. So that we recognize, and we will continue working with them as long as they want to support us.
Actually, if there is a kind of any opportunities leverage on how our people and especially the volunteers to be engaged on fact-checking activities, we are going to do that. At the moment, the way that we do is that try to engage our volunteers to help us on doing fact-checking, and we help them publish in our websites. But on X case, for example, X has a community nodes around quite a few years, but it has not been very successful in Indonesia. I think first they don't have quite representations in Indonesia that can help us to bridge on how to make sure that our volunteers can help doing the fact-checking through the community nodes in X. I think Meta has quite good representations in Indonesia. So it means that if we want to elevate both the community nodes, community means that in every content that is going to be disputed, there is kind of channel, the space that we can put some comments there, right? At the moment, I think we need to see what is going to be happen in United States. I think we need to see, but it means that there is a kind of opportunities actually to involve crowd and to educate actually, because I think we cannot assume that everyone that is going to join the community knows have the same level of understanding on how to fact check. There should be ongoing trainings, ongoing ways, like maybe examples on how to debunk deepfakes or something like that, that needs to be done. If not, then I think it's going to be messy. But of course, the necessity of the professional journalist-based fact checkers cannot be ruled out. A lot of critical issues can be answered by working very close with journalists, especially in Indonesia. We are fortunate because the Check Fakta coalitions, we have channels with journalists on the ground, so we can have answers from journalistic perspective as soon as possible if there is something that could put people in danger, especially during health misinformations or disaster misinformations, even political misinformations that can lead people to be angry because of the polarization. So I think we need to keep open the conversations about this, and to have an honest conversation is going to be beneficial for us.
Thank you so much. For Dr. Aim, the content moderation system of Facebook will be less inclusive. How do you think that this will have impact on information disorder or hate speech that are targeting minority groups?
Before I answer that question, I wanted to join in the last conversation following what Seb said. I also see it's an opportunity, and I'm just throwing ideas out there about how we could make the best out of this situation. There is another model that has been widely used in Reddit called karma-based content moderation. Karma is this system of upvoting and downvoting content. If a content gets upvoted a lot, then it's a lot more likely to be visible. That's how the algorithms work. I'm just throwing out there. On particular important topics like election, things that are likely to escalate into something physical that could potentially cause harm, you could get your community to upvote good content and use that karma-based system that way onto that platform. I don't know if the new version of Meta would look like Reddit or it has that kind of model, but it could work. So you just basically decided to intervene on strategically important issues and maybe do a little campaign amongst your community and be like, let's upvote this content because it's important and true or false. And then that would tinker with the algorithm. And yes, Seb, you said you have something to say.
Not very short, because we don't use Reddit in Indonesia because it is being blocked by the government. But I think I got your idea. It's very interesting to see how Reddit works, and we might see in the next month how you as community knows and Meta works. I think after that, then we can try to do a discussion here.
No, definitely. And research actually shown that it's really effective for countering more scientific type of misinformation in Reddit, but a little less effective for political content. But the fact that there has been existing evidence of scientific research that has actually had work on some topics, I think is important to know. And I think that leads to your other point, Ploy, about why would it be less inclusive? We don't know yet what the model would look like, how it would operate. Maybe we shouldn't be that pessimistic about why it would be less inclusive. That goes back to the point of the entire model altogether. What does it mean to be inclusive or exclusive? From the broad perspective, especially from a business standpoint, you think, in fact, going crowd means you're opening it up. Right? You are opening it up. Because we know that previous method of opening it up to the public on Meta's platform hasn't really worked. What have they been using? They have asked people to flag content. Very little users do that. In fact, based on conversations I've had with the content moderation policy as well, and please correct me, Ellen and Seb, if I'm completely wrong. They only concern, they only seem to be concerned when you're flagging the content to be dangerous, to potential cause harm. So there's different categories of why you flag particular content, the public one, not the one through fact checkers, the one you can just flag like, I find this content offensive. Then they get a monthly report about how much of that's going on, and they're really targeting the one that is an extreme sort of category. We do know that there's very low user engagement on that previous ways of trying to get people to basically crowdsource community input to flag content. So then if they're going back to the drawing board and be like, well, that method kind of didn't get a lot of engagement. Could it be because they thought that we're going to doing moderation anyway, but now that we're not, maybe people would be doing, but in fact, we have found there have been some studies that there has been some cultural issues related to engaging in content moderation, like people from certain cultures feel less inclined. And this is based on my study. Actually, I did studies in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, through the grant from Facebook about why people were reluctant to use those type of flagging. And we have found to be some cultural issues with that about flagging something to the authorities, even though that authority is probably a robot of Facebook. People don't feel like they wanted to identify themselves to flag something that they find offensive, or they worry about retribution, whatever it is. So there seems to be some kind of hesitance, and that could be specific to our region that creates other kinds of bias that you might envision. So I'm really curious to know what kind of crowdsource model they're going to adopt, and whether or not they would have reached out to people like you to provide input and look back at their previous practices. So I don't have the answer whether or not it would be less inclusive, because I don't know what it would look like. But if it would increase engagement of the community, that would fall in the definition of more inclusive. Whether or not it's a good kind of inclusiveness, we will find out.
So based on that answer, well, what about the impact on human rights and democracy in the broader picture?
So, respect to an ordinary person or a user, I think to hear the news that Facebook is walking away from content moderation sends a strong signal that they don't care. If you care about something, you don't care that you lose money, right? It's important to you. There are services that Meta provides for free because it's important for them. Same with other tech companies like Google. There are lots of products that are free and products that are not. So the free ones are the ones that when you look at it, it's like, okay, you know what? This is important to them, even though they don't make any money. It's a strong signal that they don't care. And they can justify it however they like. And so they don't care, then what do we do? I think for human rights defenders and democracy defenders in countries where those two things can just fly out the window at any point in time, it's unsettling. It almost sent a strong signal that now we need to build a more local initiatives or regional initiatives that are stronger and that care about us and those local contexts. So it's more important than ever for MAFINDO to be there, for VERA files to be there. And I know that you're directly affected by this. So what are we going to do in terms of making this financially viable, which people don't often talk about? It's crucially important. I think, Ellen, you mentioned this quite a lot as well. I totally get that. Funding from Meta or related tech companies or even USAID, which is now frozen. And it has massive effect everywhere. We know that these type of initiatives don't typically get funded by our own governments, nor do we want to get this funded by our own governments. Where else can we diversify our initiatives to make it financially viable? I think the key message we can send across our own communities and the people in our own country is that if you're going to use the platform and you know that it's not moderated, and people need to understand what moderation actually means, we can do our part. We don't have to be a silent user or a selfish user. We could contribute more than just what we care about. It's a community now, and we should take care of it as a public space, not a private space. I think it opened up the opportunity for us to launch a new kind of campaign for user awareness in a much more engaging way. We are now invited to the party in a really big way. Before, it was sort of like we're kind of invited, but we're not because we have to fill out this form and click some buttons, and I don't want to, and just But now we're like, actually, you should upvote that content. This is karma. You should do this because it's good for you. You're helping everybody. This is anecdotal, but 3 of my really good friends are really active community notes, and they're all men as well. There's a whole reason why there's a gender bias on community notes because a lot of women just don't have time. I've made this point all the time with my students about Wikipedia and everything else. We even try to do this in class to rectify gender bias. So I said, you love it? And they're like, yeah, because I'm doing something good. I feel like my voices are heard. I feel like what I care about gets written and people upvote me. And this is great. It makes me feel good about what I'm doing. So that could be an opportunity for us to show up for the party.
Okay, I think Dr. M answered the next question that I would like to ask for all the speakers. We're running late, but I would like to ask Ellen and Zach whether you have something to add regarding to what do you think that we can mitigate the impact of what is going to happen or something like that?
I don't think we have seen the worst, so we have to be prepared for it. It's not only Meta that it's now the problem, it's now the Trump administration. Seeing it from here, to me, it's a mess. Like, you don't know what role Musk has in this administration and all that. So I think we have the experience of the past weeks. We haven't recovered from the Zuckerberg announcement yet. And then we had the Trump announcement of freeze of foreign aid. And then you have the USAID, and we have all that. We're expecting worse things to happen, and we're preparing for that. So, as Dr. Aim said, you think of diversifying and all that, but then there's not much to go to, right? So that is another reality that we have to deal with, and it's a challenge for us. I think right now in our organization, we talked with everybody. We have 1 year. We are thankful that we still are assured of 1 year under Facebook. Our other funding is, we still have a few other projects under Google, so we can still operate maybe for this year. We're thankful for that. I think it's a challenge for us to be more prudent with what we have, to make it last longer. We always tell ourselves that the work continues, the work of empowering people with information for them to be able to participate in governance, to strengthen our democracy continues. I've been a journalist for many years here in the Philippines. I was a journalist during the Marcos Sr. time when he declared martial law. To me, this is not the worst. If we have overcome past problems, there's no reason why we cannot overcome this. Of course, it's a different problem with the technology and all that. But I believe in the superiority of good over evil. So I think we will overcome. That's it.
Thank you, Ellen.
One more important thing we need to do is our goal is to elevate level of resiliency on digital space for the people. So that's why now we are focusing on education. We have been working with the Ministry of Education. This is the first year that we finally enter digital literacy inside the curriculum. There's access to provide the basic level for the students. This is the third year we have the elderly digital academy to help the elderly navigate the digital space. So I think those are also very important things to do. I mean, the fact-checking ecosystem could be high and low, but for the people, I think this is also one priority that we need to continue doing together. And I think there is also questions about how to provide the kind of trainings or maybe materials that can support so that they can engage like community notes or something else. MAFINDO is also continuously providing training for our volunteers or people with basic knowledge to make sure that they can access like a basic level on doing fact checking, including fact checking on deepfakes. We have tried to create contents on how to make a simple fact checking, doing several steps, for example. So this is a thing that we are going to do more seriously. We are going to get some help also from influencers to mainstreaming this kind of activities, because I think this resiliency, I think is going to be very much important. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Ellen, you want to add to that? In the questions, what specific training or capacity building initiative would be most helpful for empowering the community member to effectively participate in crowdsourced content moderation effort on social media platform?
What kind of capacity?
Yeah, what specific training or capacity building initiative would be most helpful to empowering community?
Because we believe that the job of fighting disinformation should not be left only to professional fact checkers like us. Fighting disinformation is a job for everybody, and that everyone can be a fact checker and should be a fact checker. That's so the fight against disinformation is everybody's job. The foundation of the training VERA files does in all sectors, students, community, overseas Filipino workers, and all that. So because we believe not just giving people fish, but you teach them how to fish. So that's the foundation of the fact check training that we do for everybody. So we will continue that, like hoping that those we have trained will cascade the training to other groups. If we all work together in all our trainings and sessions here in the Philippines, we emphasize the value of truthfulness, because fact-checking can only succeed if everybody values truthfulness, because that's the basic of what we're doing. The reason why we fight disinformation is because you fight against lies and falsehood. That does not cost much. Those things we spread. So we continue with that. And if we succeed in those basics, it will take a life of its own. Yeah, hopefully.
Thank you, Ellen. We're running out of time. I'm looking at the questions. We have 4 questions, and I think that 3 of them are already mentioned or answered by the speaker during the discussions. But there's one last question before we end that I would like to ask. So for Dr. Aim, you kept mentioning Reddit as a model. What do you think is the impact of having moderator in each subreddit? It's similar to Wikipedia, but it's something not presented in X.
Reddit is a different type of community as opposed to X. The model is the same in the broad sense. They're both crowd-based model, but the way it functions differently. On Reddit, it's basically the karma-based system with the upvote and downvote, and that's how users can directly impact where the content appears, the popularity of content immediately, because it directly engages the algorithms of moving content up and down in terms of visibility. So it has a much more direct impact on visibility of content versus the Twitter model that is more obscure, whether or not the action has direct impact on where content shows up on X. But I think both of the models work differently because the communities are quite different. Even within Reddit, different types of subgroups are different. So they have way more impact on things like scientific topics, more so than political topics. And the political topic across the board have always been quite polarized. I don't know which model is better. I'm not sure where Meta is going with this either. Are they consulting with other platforms to see what's working for them, what costs them the least money? I do think they should at least reach out to their partners like VERA and MAFINDO around the world to hear their input about how they should build their crowd-based model. That will be the right thing to do. It will be more costly because it requires them to engage, but I think it will be the right thing to do.
Okay. Thank you so much. One last question. How much was Meta actually helping extend the reach and engagement in your fact check information?
We don't give out numbers, right? But it's substantial enough to help us sustain our operations and enable us to do other activities.
No, I mean like the reach. So after you fact check the information, how much they help them with the reach and engagement on those fact check information?
As far as widening our reach,
Yeah.
how much Meta has helped us?
Yeah.
Oh, I think a lot, in the sense that we have other activities. They have other programs that help us improve our engagement. So that's why we developed other means, like coming up with shorties, infograms and all that. They have been a big help in giving us other kinds of trainings to help us improve our website and our reach. Yeah, they have been very helpful.
Zach?
Well, I think this is still quite a challenge for extending the reach of our fact-checking contents. For example, when any content is being flagged by third-party fact-checkers, the reach of the content is getting lowered. So it means also the reach of our fact-checking is also getting lowered. I think this is a still ongoing discussion on how to elevate the fact-checking impact on the Meta platform, for example. But I think this we haven't really solved yet. So this is still quite a challenge for us. At the moment, I think what we are going to do is actually to make sure that we provide two types of fact-checking contents. One is longer formats of articles, but we want also to engage more people using short videos, less than 50 seconds. This is the way that we want to do actually.
Okay, so does that mean it is not clear how much Meta was actually helping to disseminate the fact-check information? Thank you so much to all the participants and speaker. I hope that learned a lot today with the situation that has been ongoing. We'll follow up with the issues. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for all the speaker today too.